The guns in our middle position. It is very close to the best position in the game. Amazing scorers in here and very consistent scorers at that. So it's always a position that you want to get sort of 4 potential guns sort of by halfway through the season very, very quickly. And, the best kind of position to start with at least 1 or 2 guns, just so you can assure getting those consistent points at the beginning when you're not exactly sure how the rest of the players in all the other positions, the more volatile positions, are going to play out. It's very much one of those stronger positions there. As you can see, I've written there, it's one of 2 positions with half that holds those best scorers, obviously with Cleary and Hines there being the clear top guys, and then a couple more halves, and then you've got sort of Payne Haas and Haas Yeo are the next guys on that list. So you definitely don't want to get this position wrong, or you are going to fall behind. And we saw that last year, that the hook and the mid is where a lot of the early points in the season were scored. They're not too tired. They're hitting and sticking. A lot of the game is actually played through the middle. There's a little bit less expansive footy. So those guys that are, stepping at the line, trying to get offloads away, trying to get tackle breaks, it's happening a little bit less through the middle. And that's where you can see, as I said, a little bit more hit and stick and less missed tackles from these types of guys. Payne Haas, we'll see in a second, is very much not a missed tackle guy anyway. He always snavels them up. But yeah, crazy position. There's a lot of that footy's played through the middle. So what you're doing here is trying to find early value in the mid-range and cheapies in this middle position. But you need to ensure you have at least 1 top-tier player, I would say, to guarantee as a second captain option, because it's going to be very hard to get like a Cleary and a Hines in. So very much your vice-captain or your captain when they have a bye. Round 5 and 6 is when Hines and Cleary have a bye. So you need to look at having one of these guys as your secondary captain option if something happens for injury-wise, but also for that bye as well. So, just having that safe scoring, as I said. As the season progresses, sort of round 6 onwards, you'll probably be able to add to your mid-gun stash, building to 3 to 4 guns fairly quickly, close to origin time, as I said. Many of these players will become valuable at some stage. It'd also be really cool to have 1 to 2 players from this position you can keep for close to the entire position just because of that consistency. And if you find 1 or 2 of these guys that don't play Origin, that could be really cool as well. And he's one of these top tier guns that I'm potentially looking at, just seeing, we'll eventually work out what kind of money we have to play with. And if it's not Payne Haas 880k level, then it could be one of these guys here. But the less trades you can use here in the mid position, the more you can use in the tougher, more volatile position. So let's get into Payne Haas off the top. We know his value. He's the best scorer in his position. Only just to Haas Yeo. Very high ceiling. Only scored the 1 try last year. So, there's always room for improvement there. His consistency is the biggest thing there, and with a low score of 47. And a lot of these scores, which we'll see in a sec, with him, the lower scores anyway, after Origin or in and around Origin there. So cons for him, he's pretty well at the top of his value, I would say, and he's going to be playing Origin as well. So let's slide over and have a look at his stats here. And minutes there at 59. So I doubt that there's too much room for growth in his minutes there. The 64 average is pretty top tier. He had the 2 line breaks. He had the 1 try only. He only had 1 try saver as well, which is probably a little bit low. Turnover tackles, incredibly, had 0 turnover tackles for the entirety of the year. Wow, I didn't even notice that before, but that is absolutely incredible. That there's some guys that get 2 and 3 in a game, and he couldn't even get 1. And he's obviously a good hitter. One of those guys that's not coming in and absolutely destroying blokes in defense. But you'd imagine at some point there would be. So there's some room for growth there for sure as well. Not much of a penalty guy. Obviously doesn't drop the ball too much either with just the 2 errors. So one of those guys at 28 tackles, 0.5 of miss, 5 tackle breaks, and 187 meters gained. A little bit more room for growth in other attacking stats. So at worst, you should see him around the 64 average, and you've got him all the way through until that first bye as well, with no buys before that. If you do want to keep him for the majority of the year, he has the bye in 13 and 16, so doesn't miss any of those extra games around that unless he does rest. But a lot of time, as we see here in around that Origin period, he plays sort of that mid-50s to 46 minutes in that round 17 one, and then ended up having a little bit of an issue with injury just after that 3rd one. So he's one of those guys that you can see here, very, very dominant. His lowest score in the first 7 games, was 62 when he's priced at 64. So there's definitely some upside at the start and just a clear top-tier option. So important to consider him as your best middle and potentially your second highest scoring player in your team heading into round 1. Isaiah Yeo, a little shout out for my 10-year-old cousin Charlie, who has picked Isaiah Yeo as the middle forward that he would be starting with. So he's clearly a guy that obviously with that bye slightly early in round 6 there, if you do happen to grab him from the start, he's very much going to be that lock and load guy for the entirety of the year, given they have a bye in 16, a bye in 19. He won't miss any extra games through Origin, and you can use him as a looper in that round 6. And it very much showed last year that even with their early bye in round 3, if you started with Isaiah Yeo, you were absolutely cheering. He's one of those guys you didn't have to touch for the entirety of the year. Lock and load, doesn't get injured. Just one of those guys that's just very durable and plays close to 80 minutes each and every week as a dominant scorer. So Isaiah Yeo, very impressive there. Same as Haas, just more consistent, but slightly lower ceiling than that of Haas. So you'd imagine that the Payne could go around that 70 average to kick off the year. Isaiah Yeo probably just going to stick around that 63 for the entirety. Obviously plays Origin as well for Isaiah Yeo. We move to Hopgood next. The dual position is pretty important for him. The 61 average is probably a tick high. That's the main issue with Hopgood. I think that starting off the season, you probably don't want to go into it with him just because his value is super high there. And I think you can spend that money a little bit elsewhere, mainly for the fact that he had a lot of high minute games when Regan Campbell was injured for a lot of the was injured for a lot of the season. But he scores in so many ways. He's dual position, potential non-Origin, so he could be a guy that you look to at that sort of round 6, 7, 8, just before their bye, I believe. Just after their bye, I should say. It's probably a good time to look at him if he doesn't get selected in Origin. He's a round 13 guy. But good chance of lower minutes as well. So we'll have a look at him now as well with Jermaine Hopgood. So at 837k, you saw minutes for him very, very high. He had a couple of lower ones, which was obviously helpful for his price to be down a tick at 52 off the bench, a 45 there off the bench in round 8 as well. But a lot of his games, he was up very high in the lock minutes there, 66 in total for him. I do think that's a tad high. He could be around that 60-ish minutes with a lot of all of their guys back fit and healthy. So if that's the case and he's somewhere around that 60 mark, we know that he can be a slightly up and down scorer, but for the most part, fairly consistent with some upside as well. So Hopgood, I think definitely one that we need to look at. It could be around after that round 10 bye that they have there. And then you get him all the way through 13, 14, a bye in 16, playing 19 as well. So Hopgood will be in our teams at some point of the season. It just might not be from the beginning. Okay, Jack de Belin. This is a very interesting one, and I want to hear a lot of your guys' thoughts on this. But 793k, obviously a fair bit cheaper, almost 100k cheaper than that of Haas. 57.7 average across the year. The big thing for him is his consistency, obviously. He averaged 63 when he played games over 60 minutes. So that was in 74 minutes played there, which gives him about 5.3 points of value, which is pretty cool. And that included 2 sim bins as well, chopping at the legs for the most part. But he has an immense buy schedule and could be a season-long set and forget. So he's one of those guys that won't be playing Origin. If you look at his buy schedule, we will in a sec, it could be really, really good. But the cons of it is there's a new coach, so I'm worried about a potential minutes drop. We do need to hear from Flanagan and sort of what he's planning to do with de Belin. But if you do look at those longer minute games, he obviously came off the interchange in the first few, so we popped that up to a 60-minute overs, and we know what he can do in other seasons as well. But just in 2023 here, 62.7 in that 74 minutes. He made 47 tackles a game, only missed 2, but even had the odd offload and some tackle breaks in there as well to go along with his 121 meters. So when you're looking at that, it's a super consistent man. The one low one there is the 39, and he was having a little bit of a tough game and then was kind of working it back in the second half, if you guys can remember. And then he ended up getting injured in that one with his head/neck injury, but then came back a few rounds later and then just pumped out those early 60s games with 51 point game in a 65-minute roll. So the worry there is the 65-minute roll. If he gets something like that, then he's not going to be worth it. But if he doesn't, then you look at this buy schedule and he doesn't have a buy all the way through until round 11, which is a good time to have it. And then you get him as this round 13 and round 14 scorer, and also around 19 there. So he's one of those overall players that could be a really good set and forget long-term keeper if the bigger minutes of that 70-ish is there, with the random 80-minute game if they have a few injuries and the like. So Jack de Belin is someone that I'm fairly interested in. We'll just have to see how things work out in that middle position, because there's so much value in the mid tier and also the cheapies, which we'll get to in a bunch of videos time, once we have a clearer picture on roles and stuff like that in January. But at this stage, he's someone to keep on your radar as a really strong long-term middle option as a season-long keeper. We move on next to big Tino Malawi. So what we've got with him, $7.93. So he's obviously the same price as Jack de Belin. He does play Origin, and he does seem to make a habit of doing his best work around Origin and after. And in those early rounds, he does seem to struggle a bit. And that's happened the last 2 years now. So I would personally push you away from Tino. He's very much at the peak of his powers, though. And goes on those really good runs. So hopefully we'll drop some price to begin the year, and then you can go from there. So 29, obviously a 70 in round 2 was good, but 43, 51, 53, 40, 52 and 45 before he kind of exploded in round 10 and onwards there. So it was even in big minutes in those first bunch, but he just seemed to struggle a bit with missed tackles, low tackles in general, and then just had the one game with a try or any attacking stats there. So Tino, with the bye in round 2, with the Origin schedule where he misses a lot of games, I think he's one to look at post Origin there, in that Manly or Dolphins game in round 2021 would be the play with Tino this year, and hopefully he's a little bit more underpriced to what he is right now. All right, so that's Tino. Very interesting, that's for sure. Adam Fanua-Blake, he became one of the really top options last year, ended up at $7.92 and had that breakout year that a few people were expecting him to have, and it was great to see. But 57.6, the pros with him, obviously so many tries, which means he has some upside games and the big minutes, and he can definitely win you some head-to-heads. I wouldn't be looking at him for overall at this price. But he did average 62.5 in games over 60 minutes. He obviously had some lower minute games in the first 7 rounds, which we'll have a look at in a sec. The cons there, obviously, the tries can be good in one sense, but the 8 tries could be bad in another. If they don't happen to play as well and he gets down to like a 4 or 5 tries in a year, 6 might be about more normal for him. Then he could drop in his average a tick, and obviously buys in 13 and 19, which is a bit tough if you're looking for him as an overall type player there. So you see the lower minutes to kick things off, and then really got into his work, and there's a lot of upside games here in the 80s, high 60s, a 79, which is great, and a 76 later in the year. So when he's scoring tries, when he's playing big minutes, he'll be great. I'm not sure if they'll require him to play those massive minutes, coming into this season. Obviously, end up at 60. That's with a few lower ones to kick things off at 44, 41, 49, and 45 there. So for the rest of the season, average in the sort of 63, 64 minute range. And I can't see him really picking up on those minutes. So up to you on that one. But obviously, taking out those early games means that he's maybe slightly underpriced there, which could be cool. All right, let's go to the next man on the list will be Patty Carrigan. $7.91, had his little breakout season last year, is priced in at 50 coming into last one, and up that for sure. So I don't know how much value or room he's got to grow. If you like watching him play, then it could be just a set and forget guy until obviously Origin there. But you're getting what you're paying for. Maybe a slight room for increased minutes. It's 68 currently, so still pretty high. But could he get to that Isaiah Yeo realm where he's in that high 70s? There's a few guys that could try and push into that. Obviously, the Belins and the like there. He had a few games of second row that bumps up those minutes too. Cons for him, obviously Origin, and there's no real value on top of that. So let's go to Carrigan here and his stats. And he started really well those first few games. And he had a little bit of a lull for that 3 before exploding again when a few people sold him, of course, and had that 97 game there with 67 tackles. So for him, it's an interesting one. He obviously picked up 2 tries in a row in round 21, 22 and 23. But those were in that second row role for the most part there, which you can see with the little information symbol. If you want to look at that, guys, it's really cool to use as well. So Piakura went off for 30, and Carrigan went to the edge, and that's where he scored his try again. So he's one of those guys that's, you're pretty much going to get that 57.5, and there's not too much else to say, but obviously you get him all the way through to 13 if you want a mid that can do that for you. That would be pretty cool. Cam Murray, $7.87, a 57 average for him is a little bit lower than what he was last year, that's for sure. I love our notice the turnover tackles here for Murray, but didn't see it for Payne Haas. But he only had the 4 turnover tackles. He's someone that does hit hard in defense, so I thought that was fairly low compared to other players there. And the offloads for him were almost halved last year. So if he can bring a little bit up, if he can get those stats a little bit up, which I think is fairly reasonable, then there could be sort of 3 to 5 points in value just in those alone. For him, the bad bye schedule is not great, so missing round 7, 13, 16, 17, so it'd be hard to hold if you did start with him, but he's definitely one of those guys that, people were captaining at the beginning of last year, being a sort of 64 average guy, and he's down at a 57. So if there's a little bit of bounce back for Murray, then he could definitely do a great job. And you saw him start fairly well last year, just a 145 in there in the lower minute game, but so 260s around that, and 87 was a solid start. And through that sort of just before Origin into through Origin there, he was very, very low scoring apart from the couple of 160 in there. So there's definitely upside on him. Minutes wise, I don't see too much of an upside. I think with them dropping him down just a little bit from previous years, and I don't think he's going to be the Isaiah Yeo type, and I don't think they need him to be with a couple of forwards on the bench with Tallis Duncan and these types of guys potentially. So 68 minutes, I think that's about where he should be, or sort of 69 minutes if you take out that one interchange game after Origin. So he definitely could be a 60 plus guy, but as I said, you're going to have to be trading him out at some point. So is it worth starting with someone that is this price that you may have to trade out when you've got guys like Belin and Tino Belin, that's like 11k more expensive that you could hold for the entirety of the year. Even less, sorry, they're expensive. That's 6k expensive, so more expensive than him. It's definitely one to think about, and I'd probably avoid personally, but I could see why people would go for him as a potential bounce back. Horsburgh won't touch on too much. He's out for the start of the year with suspension, but he had a cracker year last year. Pros for him, big minutes and offloader. Cons, he's obviously missing the start, and the minutes are a worry with Morgan Smithies and these types of guys coming in. So Horsburgh, we'll leave him out for now. Joe Tapine, 737, so fairly cheap compared to all of these guys there. 53 and a half average there. The pros for him is the attacking stats were pretty low last year with the 1 try, 1 assist, and 2 line breaks. I think that could really increase. You can get that sort of 2 to 4 points extra a game just in the attacking stats, and has a lovely PPM. 1 PPM there, but that means 53 minutes he's playing, and you'd like him to play anywhere close to that 60 on a regular basis, which he likely won't, the way Ricky plays him. Cons for him, he can play games sort of 40 to 50 minutes, which we see, which is just so low, and it's creating those massive inconsistencies there. So let's go to Taps. Let's have a little look at his 2023 season there. And as I said, just under that 1 PPM. He had a 33-minute game to finish things off, so it's really hard to work out what we can do with him. You take that minute game out, and he's sort of 1 and a bit underpriced there. Obviously, games when he plays over 50 is a little bit more lovely, but that shows 56.8 in 57.8 minutes. So we just doubt that he's going to get much more than that. He had a time where he had a couple of guys out of his team there, and he went 68 minutes for 75, which was great, and then 73 minutes for 51 and 62 minutes for 40. So it's not necessarily the case that he goes nuclear when he gets the extra minutes. So it does seem to be that his sweet spot is somewhere in that sort of mid 50s, and if he can play that regularly, he may have a spot in some people's sides across the season, given he'll play 13 and 16. But I doubt that he's someone that you're going to want to start with there in Joe Tapine. Tohu Harris, so 736k, 53.5 average. Let's just hope his body's gotten well, because when he averages 58 when it's not injury related, and he carried his knees all last year, hanging on by a thread. They were, that's for sure. He averaged 68 minutes, which is low for him as well. So if he could get back up, my main worry is he doesn't need to play close to that 80 minutes with the bench they're going to have. Bringing Kurt Capewell over, Nia Corey probably moves to the bench there. You've got Jazz Tavanga. There's a lot of different players there that could, spell a bit of time, and they want to play big minutes themselves. So I just don't see Tohu needing to do that. And they'll obviously play him 80 minutes some games. They'll play him 55 the next. So it's a little bit all over the shop. And same with Fanua Blake. His minutes were a bit up and down as well. So expect that from Tohu, but he could definitely be relevant at some point. He could also come out and start super well. You saw last year he came out and absolutely dominated, and people got him into the side quick. He then had some injuries and the like. So someone to worry about, obviously, on an injury front, but he can score really well, close to that 60. But there's not without risk, that's for sure. Cam Mciness, guys, 704k, the average is 51.2. So pros for him, if you get him over 50 minutes, his average gets to 62.7 in 59 minutes. So his PPM is terrific. The main thing with him is just a tackle machine. You love watching him if you have him in your side. Plays 13 and 19, so he could definitely be an option at some point. The main worry with him there is that we're not sure if he's going to get those minutes. So when he played the massive minutes last year was when he was in that lock position. He sees a lot of interchange games here where he didn't play a huge amount of minutes. And if you change it just to 2023 and in the lock position there, because that's where you want to be looking at. And it's 58 in 58 minutes, and that does include a 47-minute game in round 9 there. I believe that's where he broke his hand, which I owned him in that couple of game period, I think 50, 49, and 41, when he kind of lost a bit of cash. No, when did I get him? I got him for the 67, so whatever happened there, I end up having for a couple of those games there. I must have been in round 10 or 11, he got injured, I think, whatever it was. Anyway, with him there, you had that obviously massive mammoth 81 tackle game. All these games here where he played the bigger minutes is when Finucane was out. So 62, 55 minutes, he was absolutely crushing it. And if he manages to get the lock roll, that I think they will lock him into sort of 50 odd minutes, and that could be beneficial, which means he could be a little bit undervalued, but he's one that you could be trapped into as well if Finucane's there and he just becomes that bench guy again. If he's on the bench, avoid him like the plague. If he's in the lock position, we need to find out a bit more on his minutes, and then we can make a decision on Cam Mciness in there. But yeah, he's an easy guy to watch when he's getting minutes because he just tackles and he doesn't miss. And he tackles one bloke and then he's like sneaks a dummy half, and then just like the bloke runs out, one or two other guys tackling him, and then Mciness comes around the legs late and picks up that tackle. So it's a great watch when you own him, that's for sure. Ryan Matterson, the dual position man, 701k, 51 the average. So frustrating to watch. And I never owned him last year, and I'm glad I didn't, just because it was very frustrating. Because if he gets close to 80 minutes on the edge, he's undervalued, but it's unlikely he gets an edge spot with how well Cartwright played. You've got Sean Lane coming back. There's plenty going on in that side on the edges, and I think they'll use him through the middle as they have in previous years. Does get moved around a lot. Played some games of 5/8 last year, and he's fairly low minutes in the middle. So Matterson, I think, one to avoid at the moment, and just see what happens with his minutes. And if there's an injury on the edge and he goes out there and he stays there, awesome. We do see that if Moses is gone or Brown's gone, he could end up in the 6th position as well. So not ideal. Scotty Sorenson, dual position, 683k, 49.7 is the average. So for him, the pros are 3 points undervalued, in my opinion. With the full off-season on the edge, his dual position, he plays 13. So the 3 points undervalued is him when he moved to the edge. He averaged in the 52.5 range. So that was very cool. Cons for him, he may be slightly off keeper status, and he gets less tackles in a good team. So there are two things to note with Scotty Sorenson there, which we'll move to him now. At last of our footystatistics.com analysis, and we move to 2023, and games on the edge is what we want to look at here. So he had those low minute games early, and then he moved to the edge and he played some sort of 60s and 50s minutes there. And then for the majority of the rest of the year, he played close to 80. So 52.5 is the average in 72 minutes. Let's have a look at the games over 70 there, where he averaged 57. So there's definitely some upside on Scotty Sorenson. I really don't think he's a poor play at all. You get the bye in round 6 out of the way. You can use him as a looper, potentially with him and Cleary, if you have two of those guys as loopers. And then you get him all the way through round 13 and 14 with that bye period. And then he has a bye in 16 and 19. So he'd be a sell come round 16, just because he'll miss those next two buys. And hopefully by then he has averaged around that 55, and he could be a really solid option for you in that middle, and obviously the edge dual, which is really cool. So someone to note there for sure, Scotty Sorenson, if he can get that 80 minutes, that even includes a 71-minute game and an 89 in there. So, and he's a guy that's obviously playing more and more in that position, is going to get better and better. He has played a fair bit over his career, obviously with the Sharkies as well. So there's a decent amount of games in there. Yeah, so if you've extrapolated that out to over 60 minutes, there's sort of 25 games in there where he has played on the edge in the NRL, and I think that he'll only get better and better at that. The main thing you want to look at here with him is the amount of attacking stats that he picked up in 2023. And he had a game where he had a double. He got 94 points, so that means that his base was really high in that game. He had one other game where he got a try. But other than that, there's 5 try assists in there. You got 6 line breaks, so it's not overly ridiculous for an edge guy, especially when you can see players like Adam Fanua-Blake picking up 8 tries in the middle. You'd expect an edge for the Panthers to go over and do a great job. So with Capewell leaving now, Hosking kind of slightly on the out, they might release him early. I doubt that Sorenson loses many minutes. He's very much a workhorse guy with some attacking upside. So at 33 tackles as well, that's where we're kind of looking at him as a potential annoyance. And he does sort of, jump out of the line a little bit and miss some tackles. But it's all the attacking stats, the offloads that he picks up. He got 6 offloads in that game as well. 1.5 a game with 1.3 to hand. The 1.6 kick meters. No, I'm kidding. I think there's a little bit of room for him to grow on top of that. So just the minutes there, and then potentially some growth in the attacking side of the game as well as he learns the role a little bit more. So as I'm talking about him, I'm getting a little bit extra excited than I probably was when I was actually doing the analysis on Scotty. So have a look at him as definitely a potential slightly underpriced option in that role there. So yeah, very interesting. J.King, 3 left, I think. No, 5 left. A bunch left anyway. J.King, 671k. I think I'm going down to about 45 average here in the mids. 671k, average of 48.8. He started well last year. Can make a big tackle count for sure, but no real ceiling. He overachieves a little bit, and there's too many 40s. So we love him, but he's not one of those guys I think you want on your side. No Fotuaika there, 659 is the price there. He averaged 47.9, which was really good. Obviously, a big jump off last year. I was looking at last year's analysis of him, and he's one of those guys that's underperformed, and he got back to form in this season. He averaged 51 in 64 minutes of props. It's a lot of minutes there. I don't know if he's going to get all of those. You got both for more coming back. There's plenty happening in this side, but still, it's only a few points of value, and he's not a top tier keeper, so a buy early, not really worth it. And yeah, low chance of minutes increase for him. So avoiding. Blake Lawrie, 657. The average is 48. He had a really, really good game season last year. The 0.95 ppm with a huge breakout year was good. So he's around that 50 minutes a game. Cons for him, he's just not at JDB level. He's not going to get the minutes that JDB does, and they have pretty similar work rate, or pretty similar work rate at that. But Jack just gets the extra minutes, so that's where he's the dominant guy, and could be a season-long keeper where Lawrie isn't. Tom Gilbert's the dual position man, 653k, 47.5, coming off an injury. The pros for him are dual position, and he has some room for minutes growth. There's a lot of games where he's in the 50s. Cons for him, the 3.5 missed tackles a game. You need to clean up in the middle, especially coming off a season-ending injury. So I think you can wait and see with him. The early buy, work it out as we go. Junior Paulo there, so 642, average of 46.7. I just don't think there's much on offer here. Had to play big minutes anyway with injuries around. I just don't see the upside. Mitch Barnett, dual position, 639. I just think for him, he seems to be a mid-40s guy, and the minutes are all over the shop. Dual and no origin is obviously some positives, but I just don't think that's enough to pick him up. King kind of plodded around, did a great job for a lot of us last year, especially after a bit of a lower start with some injuries. 46 is the average. We sort of found his ceiling for minutes. Seems to be around that sort of 50-odd mark at best. We love his work ethic, but not really a tackle buster, etc., which we want. Jake Trbojevic, so 626k, 45.5. I just don't see, there's no minutes uptick to come. He played almost the 80 each and every week. This is who the great man is. We love him, but he's Supercoach and fantasy scoring is done. Twal, Mr. Alex Twal, got his try. First try hero, how good? 624k, 45. He averaged 45 in 45 minutes, so the PPM's hectic. If there's a stack of injuries and he plays big minutes, we'll win. We'll pick him up for sure, and he'll play big minutes. And then Toffa Sipley, to finish things off, a 622k. The average is 45.2. For him, he's priced himself up massive with a good year, especially sort of the last 4 games. So I just don't see any value with Toffa here. So I'm looking at this now for the best options for to start with here, and I'm going to chuck Sorenson in. I actually think he's a much better option. Once I looked at, I think the big thing with him, I was like, there's a little bit of value, but once I looked at if he gets closer to 80 minutes on that edge, which is a good chance that he does, then he becomes sort of a 8 or so point value guy, which would be pretty wild. So value and points, we'll say for Sorenson in there as well. But I have Haas up top for points, obviously Yeo second. And then Belin, I have him as third. I think he's a very, very good option. Could even put Sorenson higher than sort of Mciness and Murray, but that's all right. We'll leave him there for now. But Belin, the points, the schedule, and a little bit of value at that. Just a high scorer, which is good. Murray could have a bounce back, so a little bit of points and value. Mciness, the value is there if he gets the role. That's the dependent. Sorenson, we just spoke about him. And then Hopgood, the points in the dual position. He's going to be a guy we want at some point, but probably not to start with. So that's where he sits at number 7. Let me know your thoughts, guys, on the mid position. I really think I'm going to put Sorenson up into that 4th best option. Yeah, which is strange and wouldn't have thought that, but he's definitely someone to keep in mind. I think a few people will start with him too. So that's the mid position, guys. I hope you enjoyed that video. I hope you're getting plenty out of these. Tell your mates as well. Yeah, I really appreciate that if you were able to spread the word on this channel. That's all I can really ask for you guys. And if you're if you're a loyal watcher and watching most of them, listening to most of them, I really appreciate you guys. And thanks for being here. I hope you have a cracking New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, and we'll catch you on on January 2 with another video. See you, team.